And today I want to discuss real estate investment on the Azores. Now, the Azores consist of 9 major islands in 3 different groups. On the west side, you will find Flores and Corvo. In the central group, you will find the largest cluster, which includes Tercera, São Jorge, Pico, Faial, and Gracioso. On the east side, you have Santa Maria and São Miguel, which is the largest island and is also the most densely populated, with over 140,000 people living here. Now, there are approximately 240,000 people living in the Azores, so this does tell you that São Miguel really is the most dominant island. So today, as I've said, I will discuss the advantages and disadvantages of buying real estate in the Azores and give my conclusions at the end. So let's first discuss the advantages. And the main advantage, number one, is price. So on average, prices in the Azores are less than €1,000 per square meter, and these prices are much lower than Lisbon, Porto, and the Algarve. So making a direct comparison, this would indicate that the Azores are a better bet than many places in Portugal. But if we look at prices as well compared to Madeira, they are lower, but the differential is much less. Number two, I want to talk about the golden visa still applying here. Now, as I've already discussed in my video on Portugal golden visa changes in 2022, you can no longer acquire property in areas such as Lisbon, Porto, the Algarve, and the Silver Coast, and from this obtain a golden visa. This being the case, more property investment will transfer from these areas to places like the Azores, where the golden visa for acquiring a property is still valid. Number three, I want to talk about the good business environment. So the Azores has a good business environment compared to mainland Portugal, in as much as the main VAT rate is 16% compared to 23% on the mainland, and corporate income tax is also lower at 14.7% compared to 21% on the mainland. Number four, I want to talk about the low crime rate. So in all honesty, in the Azores, you will have a tough time finding anywhere in the world as safe. You can walk around night and day and pretty much feel completely safe. Now, I've read a lot of forums, I've spoken to a lot of people, and it does feel as though tourists are almost completely untouched by crime. Number five, I want to talk about the temperate climate. So it's great in the Azores because it never gets too hot or too cold. So you should be able to do Airbnb the whole year round. And this goes hand in hand with a significant increase in the number of tourists visiting the islands in the last 10 to 15 years or so. And number six, I want to talk about the good flight connections. So although there are several airports in the Azores archipelago, there is only really one main international airport, which is Punta Delgado Airport on São Miguel Island. From here, there are direct flights to major cities like London, Paris, Brussels, Frankfurt, Amsterdam, Madrid, New York, Boston, and Toronto. So a lot of direct flights, and it's really for a set of quite small islands. This is quite impressive. However, now I want to talk about some disadvantages. And number one, I spoke about the temperate climate, but yes, the temperature is pretty much good the whole year round, but the weather is quite changeable. So it can rain a heck of a lot in the Azores, and I think this could limit the scope for further tourism when compared to Madeira and the Algarve. Number two, now there are a lot of direct flights, as I've said, to major cities in the world from the Azores. However, a lot of these flights are seasonal, so it's actually easier to get to, for example, Funchal in Madeira than it is in the Azores off-season. Number three, I want to talk about falling population. So the population has been falling in the Azores, albeit slightly, over the last 10 years or so. But the islands of São Miguel and Flores have been two of the most affected by these population changes. Indeed, São Miguel's population has fallen by around 10% in the last 10 years or so. Number 4, I want to talk about the low salaries. So salaries in the Azores are pretty low. So we are talking about well under €1,000 per month net. And this is even applicable to the capital of the Azores, Ponta Delgado, on the island of São Miguel. You are looking at around 700 to 750 euros a month net, and this is low. Number 5, I want to talk about the remoteness of the islands. So many still consider the islands a little bit too remote and too expensive to get to when compared to flying to other parts of Portugal. So, for example, the Algarve or Madeira. And number 6, I want to make a comparison with between Ponta Delgado, the capital of the Azores, and Funchal, the capital of Madeira. So salaries in Funchal are higher than Ponta Delgado, and although prices per square meter as a whole are lower in the Azores than Madeira, this is not the case comparing Funchal and Ponta Delgado. Indeed, I was a little bit disappointed that the prices, in particular of apartments in Ponta Delgado, are in general well over €1,000 per square meter. Although, as I've said, they're a lot lower in the other parts and the other islands of the Azores. So, should you make an investment here? Now, to be honest, I think if you do buy in the Azores, and in particular Ponta Delgado, you'll do okay. I believe there is scope for future growth in the real estate market, but personally, I actually prefer Funchal in Madeira. And as I've said, because the weather is actually better in Funchal than it is, for example, in Ponta Delgado in the Azores, it's easier to get to off-season as well. And I think this will make it a better place to invest, in particular for the Airbnb market all year round in Funchal. However, if you do decide to go ahead and buy in the Azores, where should you buy? To be honest, in my opinion, you realistically are looking at two options. Now, the first place I would choose is São Miguel Island, and more specifically Ponta Delgado. So this is because it's the largest and most densely populated of the islands, and it means there's more demand for property. And Ponta Delgado has the best internet speed, and hence it's best, for example, here for digital nomads. So you could, if you do decide to invest, potentially buy a property and rent it to a digital nomad, or indeed to tourists who come and visit the island. So if you don't decide to go, for example, for Ponta Delgado on the island of São Miguel, where else could you go? And my second, and I think only other realistic option, is Terceira. Now, Terceira is the second most populated island of the Azores, which is probably the best spot for nightlife as well, and where property is a lot cheaper than São Miguel Island, and in particular Ponta Delgado. And also what I like about Terceira is it has an amazing, a really beautiful historical centre, which is actually a World Heritage Site. So as I've said, I believe there's only really two options where to buy on the Azores. The other islands are a little bit too small, and there's not enough people living there for continued demand for property in the future. Anyway, those are my thoughts. I would absolutely love to know your thoughts. Have any of you bought in the Azores? Are any of you thinking of buying in the Azores? I would love to know your thoughts. Anyway, that's it for today. Many thanks for watching this video, and I'll see you very soon on the next.